I have for you today the full and final answer to everything. I've been worrying at this all my life, but I've been working at it assiduously since Man Alive was published in 2012. Wow, 5 years. I expected the whole world to change in 5 years. I thought we'd be done by now. We're not even begun. But I can tell you procedurally what needs to be done as matters of reform. I hate the whole idea of reform. It's alien to my nature. I don't want to be involved in government or meetings. Anything that involves a meeting is something I want to miss. And I think that reform is a poor idea because the reformist agenda already subsumes the agenda of the master class. To seek to reform a tyranny is to become a part of the tyranny because you haven't challenged the most fundamental premise, which is the invalidity of the tyrannical imposition of one person's will over another person's will. That alone, that one action, one person dominating another, is crime, and crime amplified is just worse crime, far worse crime. To attempt to reform crime is to become a criminal. You have to replace crime. You can't reform it. You have to supplant it. But the reforms that I'm going to suggest will actually supplant the criminal element in our culture over time. The first one I talked about 3 weeks ago when I made church the last time, or 4 weeks ago, whenever it was, is inspiriting toddlers. Putting the spirit of splendor, putting the idea that hard work pays off, putting the idea that pursuing and achieving your goals will make you happier, that seeking moral perfection, seeking to become better and better in your moral praxis every day with every choice will make you better and happier over time. Selling that idea to toddlers so that they incorporate that idea as their habit of mind. The reason that you think this way is because you incorporated those ideas when you were a toddler. And it's virtually impossible to change the habits of mind that a toddler adopts. And accordingly, we need to be working very, very hard to make sure that our own children, but ideally as many children as possible, are being exposed to ideas that will result in the achievement of splendor and will inspirit children with the understanding that the pursuit of splendor is the ideal goal in the human life. That's the first thing. That's the first reform that's necessary. And if you're not willing to do this, I mean, you do it for your own children, 3 cheers for you. Maybe you don't do it for your own children. Mea culpa, by the way. I was less than ideal as a father. I could wish I had done better. I'd like to think that I would do better now, but I don't intend to do that job again. I will be avuncular to my nephew and possibly someday other children who come into my life, but my shot at being a father is over and I screwed it up, and I don't ever want to give the impression that I'm as good as the testudo fathers that I praise all the time, because I never was. I missed that mark. I understand it as a goal. I understand why it's a worthy goal, and that ultimately is what you're attempting to do when you're trying to inspirit children with ideas that will lead them to splendor, is that you are attempting to create testudo fathers and testudo mothers. You're attempting to help other people's children find their way to the testudo family, because that's the only family that can reliably secure the fully human future of the offspring of a family. You can't do anywhere near as good for other people's children as you can do for your own, and values run from near to far, so look out for your own first, and look out for your own fully, completely. Make sure that you really are living up to that testudo ideal, that you really are helping your children achieve the most and best of the human mind by ridding them of the self-destructive habits and tendencies that are the air that they breathe every moment that they're outside the house. You can't, the ideal way to reproduce testudo fathers is with testudo fathers, but we have a shortage of them, a tremendous, devastating, catastrophic shortage of testudo fathers. To get more, we're going to have to cultivate them among children who are not being raised by testudo fathers. And ultimately that leads to the second piece of the reform agenda, and that is simply to eliminate family law in its entirety, to make children the de facto charges, the de facto dependents, the de facto property, essentially, of the father in every case. No exceptions. No exceptions. If you want to take the children away from the father, take them away from the father. If you insist that that's something you want to do, whether you do it as a private person, which is the only way that I would ever recommend it, or if you do it as the state, take them from the father, but don't give them to the mother. Don't reward mothers for destroying their families, for undermining and dispossessing the fathers of their own children. Those are his children. His only reason for marrying her, his only reason for creating that household, his only reason for spawning and cultivating those children is because they're his. It's his family. They're his children. Stop taking them away from him. Stop subsidizing all manner of reproductive errors and make people fall back on their own resources. And when you do that, you will see a sudden flowering of testudo fathers everywhere, because the only time that you can reliably count on adults, where adulthood begins at age 5, really, immature and inexperienced adulthood, but a child is everything an adult is without the experience. The only way that adults will consistently change their lifelong habits of mind is when reality slaps them in the face and they have to figure out a new way of doing things because the old way doesn't work anymore. But as soon as you eradicate family law, fathers will step up, fathers will raise their children, fathers will become testudo fathers, fathers will make sure that their children aren't being poisoned by outside influences, fathers will police the way their children look, talk, act, walk, study, dress. Fathers will assert a paternal authority over their families because that will be the only recourse for mom and for all the kids. And this will have enormously salutary benefits. There's nothing that you can point to that you object to in the modern world that I can't pin on the underfathered state of our children. So the way they dress, the way they walk, the tattoos, the piercings, the incredible illiteracy, the lack of historical context, the inability to reason beyond A to B, all of the things that you could say about the millennial generation and younger, all of those things are further consequences of underfatheredness. But go back a generation and find the lax commitment to marriage, marital infidelity, the plasticity of relationships, including the one-off relationships and things like that, the things that we associate with the baby boomers, that's also the underfathered state. All, going back, everything that we decry about the automobile, everything that everybody decried about chewing gum or crossword puzzles, on and on and on. Every lament that you could ever find anywhere since 1850 or so is a further consequence of our having undermined fatherhood. And accordingly, the only way that we will fix Western civilization is by restoring the father's role as the paterfamilias, as the patriarch of his family, as the lord and master of his estate. And fathers will police each other, which is what they've always done. They'll police each other. There's no need to worry about all the hysterical counterexamples that you're going to put forward, because when you make people fall back on their own resources, and when you make it clear to them if they eat a week's worth of groceries in 2 days, they're going to go hungry for 5 days, and nobody is going to give a shit. If you let them know that the game is over and they don't get to scam other people for their livelihood anymore, they'll stop doing it. They'll take responsibility for themselves. They'll pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They'll do incredibly productive things, and they will raise incredibly responsible, incredibly productive children. We will repair everything by restoring the status of fathers. Until we have the guts to do that, what you can do instead is help children learn to do better with the incredible gift of the human mind. But these are the only two reform measures that matter, and everything else that anyone projects or supposes or promises is just niggling at the margins. The core problem is we have robbed our children of their fathers, And in so doing, we've robbed our civilization of its core, of its motive, of its motor, of its engine. We've robbed civilization of the thing that drives it. And it is stalled now, and soon it will be rolling backward. This is an avoidable fate. This is a correctable nuisance. And this is something that you can get started on today. You can't change family law today, but you can change the way that you interact with toddlers so that they see that there's more to the world than they're seeing at home. That's a mitzvah. That's an incredible gift. You could change a life forever without even knowing it. With something as simple as a smile. How cool is that? This is the Church of Splendor. My name is Greg Swan. I don't promise you I'll be with you next week, but I'll be with you soon, and I'm so glad to talk to you. Thank you.